Hello guys, my name is Anna and I'm from Ukraine, and I vlog daily to keep you updated on real-life situation in my country during this awful war with Russia. If you're new to my channel, please check the videos and subscribe, because the world needs to know more about Ukraine and needs to know more about Russian crimes that threaten the world, not just Ukrainians. And today is one of those videos that I hate recording, because we are going to speak about another awful crime committed by Russian, I cannot say even soldiers, because these are not soldiers, these are not orcs, but Russian maniacs, Russian murderers, Russian terrorists, Russian devils, or whatever you choose. And I'm not going, of course, to link any videos or to closely go into the detail, because it is heartbreaking and it makes you feel sick at the same time, and anyway, it needs our discussion. So yesterday in social media, many of you read, some of you saw the video that was shared by Russians, and that is the video of Ukrainian prisoner of war who was executed by them, but executed in an extremely brutal and ugly manner for human beings. They cut his head, and they not cut his head with specific knife or an axe, they were cutting it with the usual knife. And they did not manage to do it easily, because, well, like all of you are adults, and if you don't want, you can skip a couple of seconds, because I have to mention that, and continue watching the video later. But like, it was difficult to cut his head with an ordinary knife, and he was alive at that moment, and he was saying that it's very painful. But they were discussing that they have to continue, they are brothers, and there is just one task to broke the backbone, and then they will be able to continue. I am sure many of you don't want to know about that, neither do I. Look, I'm like a let's say highly educated woman who likes totally different things, but I live in a country where anyone, everyone, can be killed because he is or she is Ukrainian, because we say we're different. You know, this diversity that your countries support is a problem for Ruski Mir. And not only one can be killed, but one can be killed this way that people stopped killing chicken in their households hundreds of years ago or decades, because like we are all moving in that direction of becoming more normal, more tolerant, more human, and Russians are moving in just the contrary direction. So this is, when I was reading this news with some of the details that I'm not going to share with you to protect your thoughts and sleep at night, I felt like both hatred, disgust. Physiologically, it's difficult, because I have a kind of brain that visualizes everything that I'm reading, and I feel that it is a tragedy, not only for Ukraine, not only for the person executed in such a brutal way, violent way, but it is a tragedy for humanity, that people like that exist, and they are called soldiers in Russia. I do know that war shows the worst in people. It's common since the time of ancient Greece and Rome. But what is that worst of yours changes and depends greatly from culture to culture, from ideology to ideology, from person to person. And even remembering that awful execution of Ukrainian prisoner of war who was shot after his words, glory to Ukraine, it was a crime of war, a war crime that the Russians commit in hundreds daily in Ukraine. But I don't know how can we name this act of cutting a person's head while he is still alive, and the knife does not go well through his flesh and the backbone is not broken yet. How can we name this? What depth of evil is in their souls, in their hearts, in anything? So we do understand that when we are hungry, when we are protecting our land, when we are In extraordinary circumstances, our subconsciousness can come out, but I am confident that my subconsciousness will never be like that, and of Ukrainian soldiers and of you. So imagine what must be in the heads, lives, souls of these people that they are capable of doing it. Worst in Ukrainian version is nothing in comparison to worst in Russian version. I know that executions like that, but once again, perhaps with a sharper knife and much faster, with less torturing of a prisoner, happen. Ideal used to demonstrate them. And the reaction of the world was global. A global fight against terrorism, and I totally support that, because terrorism is the way to death, the way to destruction. But the reaction was very strong, and some people, some cultures even received totally unnecessary attention or disrespect based on some very stereotypical connections to these actions. But Russia will get nothing for that. In a month, people will continue talking about Russophobia. And look, Idil is persecuted everywhere, in all countries and in all cultures. It is a synonym to evil, to terrorism. And Russia is ahead of UN Security Council this month. This is what nukes give you. But it shouldn't be like that, because then the world stands on something very wrong and very shaky. And tell me, please, do you want to live in the world where Russia remains the way it is? Do you want us to stop fighting in Ukraine? Do you want us to lose? Do you want us to start negotiating with people who do this? Russian soldiers are all evil. Of course, I understand that not every one of them is able of doing that. But every one of them was able to cross Ukrainian border, to enter innocent Ukrainian villages and towns, to start killing vulnerable people. And acts of such terror and brutality as we witnessed yesterday on social media is not unique. Remember Bucha, remember Irpin, remember Mariupol, remember other villages that have names you don't know, and that had people we will never find. Crimes of this style, and once again I believe the word crime is not enough for that. Crimes of this type is bad because they are meant to spread terror and fear among Ukrainian soldiers, because no one wants to die, and especially no one wants to die this way. And since the beginning of 2014, many Ukrainian soldiers avoid getting captured by Russians and commit suicide or do whatever they can, because they know Russians like cutting limbs, castrating them, cutting heads with not sharp knives and other awful tortures that many people who train Ukrainian soldiers in NATO countries cannot even imagine. And when our soldiers share with them these stories, they don't believe it's possible. But now you have videos, and those of you who are strong enough can watch them. And I think professional military men in NATO countries who speak about laws of war and ways to negotiate with Russia, politicians like Macron, should watch more of such videos before going to sleep. So one thing is that these videos share terror and terrify Ukrainians, but another thing, they also terrify Russians and connect them. Because I hope you understand that people in that battalion are connected because they committed this crime together, even if they were not present at the moment. And all Russians, what associations do we have with them? And many of them will be afraid to give up, will be afraid to lose, and once again will also fight to death because they understand the crimes they have committed will persecute them forever. And I'm confident in that. The crimes that Russia commits will persecute it forever. And I also believe in something like karma. Not going deeply into religious or spiritual aspects, but I believe if you do a lot of evil, it will return back to you. And future centuries for Russia are gloomy. And the problem is that seeing this crime committed perhaps last summer, we have to realize that hundreds and thousands of similar happened, but they were not filmed or they did not get on our news. The other thing is, witnessing all that, in a week, more political leaders will advise to negotiate or will accept Russia in United Nations or will visit some of its cities or whatever. Russia is a terrorist state. Honestly, today it is worse than ideal, though both of them should not exist in their modern state. But they threaten the world, they terrorize the world, they torture people, and they still act as political agents. And I would like to sum this all up with the phrase that I've heard in Zelensky's address. First of all, he asks global political leaders to react, because then you're not political leaders if you don't react. And second, what you saw, those of you who saw, those of you who heard me retelling the story of the execution of the Ukrainian prisoner of war by cutting his head that is not sharp enough while he's still alive. This is the video of modern Russia. This is the essence of Ruski Mir that they want to spread far beyond Ukrainian borders into your countries in different ways. Some of you tell me, oh, NATO starts just at the borders of Ukraine. Come on. In many cases, we've seen like strong leaders and strong countries prefer to demonstrate concerns and not to escalate. So if one day, God forbid, Russia wants to attack a smaller NATO country, it is very likely that NATO will decide not to escalate. That is a tragedy, and that is a huge danger, because this video demonstrates what Russia is, and it can break all the laws, not of just war, but of any human being. So let us be strong, and let us finish this evil in the most effective way. Thank you so much for your attention and understanding. Please forgive me if I was a little bit too direct today, but I'm Ukrainian. I live in a country at war. Thank you for your support. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons. This all helps me tell more about Ukraine. And thank you that you want to know more about Ukraine. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And Slava Ukraini!